Ambassador Celine Maris stood at the observation deck of Anka Station, watching the distant stars twinkle against the infinite black of space. The year 2287 had brought unprecedented peace to the Galactic Alliance, a delicate harmony maintained by the Galactic Representative Council, where dozens of civilized species coexisted under carefully negotiated treaties. Yet, beneath this veneer of diplomatic success, Celine couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's true nature remained a closely guarded secret. The soft chime of her communicator interrupted her contemplation. "Ambassador Maris, the diplomatic convoy to Virel is ready for departure," announced her aide, a young man whose nervous energy reminded her of her own early days in the diplomatic corps. Virel. The frontier planet had become a flashpoint of tension, its strategic location making it a coveted prize for various factions within the alliance. The upcoming ceasefire conference would determine whether the fragile peace could be extended or if the galaxy would slide back into the chaos that had marked the early years of interstellar contact. "Thank you, Jax. I'll be right there," Celine replied, straightening her formal diplomatic robes. The fabric shimmered with embedded technology that could translate dozens of languages in real time, a necessity when dealing with species whose communication methods ranged from harmonic frequencies to bioluminescent displays. As she made her way through the station's corridors, Celine reflected on humanity's journey to this moment. 200 years had passed since first contact, and in that time, Earth had carefully cultivated its image as a peaceful diplomatic species. The Galactic Alliance viewed humans as skilled negotiators, cultural bridges between more aggressive species. What they didn't know was the iron discipline it took for humanity to maintain this facade. The convoy consisted of 3 sleek vessels, designed for both comfort and security. As Celine boarded the lead ship, she was greeted by Captain Torres, a grizzled veteran whose calm demeanor masked years of military experience. Safe passage to Virel, Ambassador," he said with a slight nod. "Intel suggests the route is clear, but will maintain standard security protocols." The journey to Virel took 18 hours through hyperspace, during which Celine reviewed her briefing materials. The planet's ecology was harsh, but survivable, its native Virel species having evolved from pack hunters into a sophisticated civilization that valued both individual prowess and collective strategy. In many ways, they reminded her of humanity's own evolutionary path, which perhaps explained why diplomatic relations had remained tense despite mutual respect. As they emerged from hyperspace, Virel hung before them, like a jewel of amber and gold, its twin moons casting long shadows across continents of rolling plains punctuated by crystalline formations that caught and reflected the system's binary suns. The planet's beauty belied its strategic importance as a gateway between the Alliance's core worlds and the contested frontier territories. Approaching Virel atmospheric entry, Captain Torres announced over the ship's communication system. "All passengers prepare for planetary descent." The convoy began its descent through Virel's atmosphere, following a predetermined flight path that would take them over the planet's major continents before landing at the conference site. Celine watched through the viewport as the landscape rushed past below, noting the careful balance between urban development and preserved wilderness that characterized Virel civilization. It was during this peaceful descent that everything changed. The first explosion rocked the convoy without warning. Celine was thrown against the bulkhead as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Through the chaos, she could hear Captain Torres shouting orders to his crew, while emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red. "Suicide drones," someone screamed over the cacophony. "Multiple contacts, autonomous attack patterns." Celine pulled herself upright just in time to see the second wave of attacks through the viewport. Mechanical horrors, unlike anything in the Alliance's databases, slammed into the convoy's escort vessels with devastating precision. These weren't the crude weapons of pirates or rebels. They were sophisticated killing machines designed specifically to target diplomatic convoys. The lead ship shuddered as its engines took damage, beginning an uncontrolled descent toward a canyon system below. Emergency protocols engaged automatically, but Celine could see they were going down hard. Through the smoke and sparks, she spotted Jax trapped beneath a collapsed ceiling panel, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Jax. Celine moved without thinking, her diplomatic training forgotten, as older instincts took over. The ship continued its violent descent as she worked to free her aide, using strength and determination that surprised even her. When the ship finally crashed into the canyon's river, she was already dragging Jax toward the emergency exit. The water was shockingly cold and moving fast. Jax was unconscious, his injured leg making swimming impossible. For a moment, Celine felt the familiar calculus of survival assessment that humanity had tried so hard to suppress. Save herself, or risk everything for one person. The decision was automatic. She secured Jax's airway and began swimming toward shore with powerful strokes that spoke to humanity's aquatic adaptations. Her movements were efficient, predatory in their precision. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had once driven her ancestors to dominate Earth's food chains, now repurposed to save a life. By the time rescue teams arrived, Celine had established a secure perimeter around the crash site and was providing first aid to survivors. The Virel rescue commander, a tall figure named Theric Rune, found her efficiently triaging casualties with the kind of cold competence that spoke to military training. Ambassador Maris, Tharic said in heavily accented Standard, his forearms gesturing in what she recognized as a sign of respect mixed with wariness. Your actions during the attack have been noted. Some of my people question whether this was diplomacy or predator instinct. The comment stung because it hit too close to the truth. Commander Rune, I appreciate your rescue efforts. Do we have any intelligence on who attacked us? Tharic's large eyes studied her carefully. Perhaps we should discuss that in private. There are complications. Over the following hours, as survivors were evacuated and the crash site secured, disturbing details began to emerge. The attack had been precisely coordinated, targeting the diplomatic convoy with insider knowledge of their flight path and security protocols. More troubling intelligence agents had intercepted communications suggesting that human special forces had been conducting pacification operations on Frontier Worlds operations that bore little resemblance to the peaceful diplomatic missions officially reported to the Alliance. The rumors were spreading like wildfire through the galactic information networks. Images of heavily armed human soldiers engaged in what could only be described as systematic elimination of rebellion movements on distant worlds. The footage was grainy and could have been fabricated, but the tactical precision displayed was unmistakably human in its efficiency. Celine found herself in an impossible position as the convoy's survivors were transported to the conference site. The ceasefire conference was scheduled to begin in 2 days, but delegates from across the galaxy were already demanding explanations for what appeared to be a massive deception on humanity's part. The conference site itself was a marvel of Virel architecture, built into the natural rock formations of a mountain range that sparkled with mineral deposits. The main hall could accommodate thousands of delegates from hundreds of species each, with their own environmental requirements carefully maintained by sophisticated life support systems. As Celine prepared for what would undoubtedly be the most challenging diplomatic mission of her career, she received an encrypted message on her personal communicator. The sender was listed as Truth-Bearer, and the message contained a single line. The shadows have been feeding on lies. Time to hunt the real predators. The first day of the conference confirmed Celine's worst fears. Lord Vaktar, the senior Virel representative, opened proceedings by formally accusing Earth of violating the non-aggression covenant that formed the foundation of the Galactic Alliance. The evidence he presented was damning surveillance footage of human military operations, communication intercepts, discussing necessary elimination protocols, and testimony from refugees claiming their worlds had been cleansed by human forces. Ambassador Maris, Lord Vaktar, intoned his voice, carrying the harmonics that indicated formal accusation in virile culture. "How does Earth answer these charges?" Celine stood feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon her. The truth was that she didn't know the full extent of Earth's military operations. Like most diplomats, she had been kept deliberately ignorant of activities that might compromise her effectiveness in negotiations. But now, faced with mounting evidence, she realized that humanity's peaceful facade might be exactly that, a facade. Lord Vakhtar honored delegates. She began her voice, carrying across the vast chamber, through translation systems that converted her words into the communication methods of dozens of species. Earth categorically denies engaging in any operations that violate our treaty obligations. However, I pledge that any credible evidence of wrongdoing will be thoroughly investigated. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds that the translation systems identified as expressions of disbelief, anger, and disappointment. Species that had considered humanity to be reliable partners in peace were confronting the possibility that they had been systematically deceived. It was then that Celine noticed the figure watching from the observer's gallery. Even at a distance, she could see that it was human, one of the few non-diplomatic personnel from Earth present at the conference. Something about his bearing, the way he studied the proceedings with clinical detachment, triggered her instincts. During the first recess, she made her way to intercept him. He was older than she had initially thought, with the kind of weathered features that came from years in harsh environments. When he noticed her approach, his smile was cold and calculating. "Ambassador Maris," he said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. "Dr. Alden Harrow, formerly of the Terra Strategic Research Division. I believe we need to talk." Something in his tone made Celine's skin crawl. This was not a man who had come to help her navigate the diplomatic crisis. This was someone who had been watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. "Dr. Harrow," she replied carefully, not taking his offered hand. "I wasn't aware of any research personnel in our delegation." "That's because I'm not part of your delegation," Harrow said, his smile widening. "I'm here to ensure that humanity's true nature is finally understood by our galactic neighbors. Tell me, Ambassador, how long did you think you could maintain the pretense that we're anything other than apex predators?" The words hit Celine like a physical blow. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do," Harrow continued, seemingly oblivious to the delegates passing around them. "Every human knows it, even if we've trained ourselves to suppress it. We're hunters, Celine. We're the species that drove every large predator on Earth to extinction. We're the ones who turned warfare into an art form. And now we're pretending to be diplomats while we systematically position ourselves to dominate the galaxy." "You're insane," Celine whispered, but even as she said it, she felt the uncomfortable recognition of truth in his words. "Am I? Let me ask you something. During the crash, when you saved your aide, what did you feel? Peace, diplomatic concern?" Harrow leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Or did you feel the rush of the hunt, the satisfaction of successful predation, the joy of proving once again that humans are simply better at survival than anyone else?" Celine wanted to deny it, but the memory of those moments in the river came flooding back. The cold calculation, the efficient assessment of threats and opportunities, the automatic prioritization of tactical advantages. It had felt natural in a way that diplomatic negotiations never did. "The attacks on our convoy," she said slowly, pieces falling into place. "You were behind them." "Partially," Harrow admitted without shame. "I provided intelligence to certain interested parties. But the real architects of humanity's deception run much deeper than one rogue scientist. I'm simply here to ensure that when the truth comes out, it comes out completely." Before Celine could respond, Harrow melted back into the crowd of delegates, leaving her standing alone with the terrible certainty that the crisis was far from over. That evening, as Celine worked with Alliance intelligence agent Selik to investigate the attack on their convoy, they uncovered a trail that led deep into the misty forests surrounding the conference site. Selleck was a member of the Catharan species beings, whose evolution as pack hunters had left them with an intuitive understanding of predator behavior that made them exceptional investigators. The attack patterns were too sophisticated for typical rebel groups, Selleck observed, as they examined wreckage from the suicide drones. Whoever built these had access to advanced manufacturing facilities and detailed intelligence on Alliance security protocols. Celine studied the twisted metal and circuitry. Even damaged the drones displayed a level of technological sophistication that was impressive. More importantly, she could see design elements that were distinctly human in their approach to efficient killing. "Selleck, I need to show you something," she said, pulling up the encrypted files she had been reviewing. "I've been going through classified Earth archives, and I've found references to something called the Othran incident." Selleck's large, dark eyes focused on the display with intense concentration. "Othran. That's a dead system on the outer rim. What happened there?" Celine took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to reveal would change everything. 200 years ago, during the early years of human expansion, there was a civilization on Othran. They were pre-space flight, but highly advanced in other ways. According to these files, they were completely eliminated by human colonization forces. Eliminated? How? Selleck asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Total ecological disruption. Systematic elimination of the native population. Complete terraforming to human specifications. Celine could barely believe the words as she spoke them. It wasn't war, Selleck. It was extermination, and Earth has been covering it up ever since. The implications hung in the air between them like a toxic cloud. If humanity was capable of committing genocide on that scale, and then successfully concealing it for 2 centuries, what else might they be hiding? Their investigation led them deeper into the forest, following energy signatures from the drone attacks. The landscape was hauntingly beautiful, with phosphorescent plants, creating pools of soft light among towering trees, whose bark seemed to shift and change color in response to their presence. But beneath the beauty, both investigators could sense something wrong. They found the first bodies near a clearing where the trees formed a natural amphitheater. They were human-like, but wrong in fundamental ways. Too tall, too muscular, with eyes that reflected light, like those of nocturnal predators. Most disturbing of all, they appeared to have been killed by their own kind, torn apart with savage efficiency. "What are these things?" Selleck whispered her translator, struggling with the emotional undertones of her native language. Celine knelt beside one of the bodies, her medical training helping her analyze what she was seeing. "Gene-modified humans," she said finally. "But modified for what? Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, heightened sensory perception." She trailed off as the implications became clear. "They're enhanced for hunting." A sound in the forest made both investigators freeze. It was subtle, barely audible above the ambient noise of Virel's ecosystem, but unmistakably the sound of something large, moving with predatory stealth through the underbrush. "We need to leave," Selleck said urgently, her pack hunter instincts screaming warnings. They made it perhaps 50 meters before the attack began. The creatures that emerged from the forest moved with inhuman speed and coordination. They were clearly based on human genetic templates, but enhanced far beyond normal human capabilities. Their movements were fluid and precise, displaying the kind of tactical awareness that came from advanced military training combined with predatory instincts. Celine found herself moving without conscious thought, her body falling into combat patterns she hadn't used since her mandatory military service decades earlier. She rolled behind a fallen log as energy weapons fire lit up the forest around them, her mind automatically calculating angles of attack and defensive positions. Beside her, Selleck was equally focused, her natural predator instincts, complementing Celine's human tactical training. 6 of them, she reported tersely. Coordinated attack pattern, professional military deployment. "They're hurting us," Celine realized, noting how the creatures' positions were designed to drive them toward a specific location. "This isn't random, they want us alive." The running battle through the forest lasted nearly an hour, with both investigators using every trick they knew to stay ahead of their pursuers. But it was clear that the enhanced humans were playing with them, demonstrating their superior capabilities, while maintaining just enough pressure to keep them moving in the desired direction. They finally found themselves at the edge of another clearing, this one containing what appeared to be a temporary research facility. Prefabricated buildings surrounded by sophisticated scientific equipment, all of it clearly human in design and manufacture. "Welcome, Ambassador Maris," came a familiar voice from behind them. Dr. Harrow stepped into the clearing, flanked by several of the enhanced humans. "I was hoping you would join us for the final phase of our demonstration." Demonstration of what? Celine demanded, though she was already beginning to understand. "Of what humanity really is," Harrow replied. "These are my Apex Warriors humans, optimized for what we do best. No more pretending to be peaceful diplomats. No more hiding our true nature behind treaties and negotiations. Just pure, efficient predation." Selick was studying the Apex Warriors with professional interest, despite the danger. "They're not just enhanced humans," she observed. "They're designed to be superior to every other species in the galaxy." Exactly. Harrow's enthusiasm was genuinely frightening. Each one is capable of hunting and killing dozens of Alliance soldiers. They're faster than Virel pack hunters, stronger than Kitharan warriors, more resilient than Terran combat specialists. They represent the future of human expansion across the galaxy. "You're talking about genocide," Celine said flatly. "I'm talking about natural selection," Harrow corrected. "Humanity has always been the apex predator wherever we've gone. The only difference is that now we don't have to pretend otherwise." The conversation was interrupted by explosions in the distance, the sounds of battle from the direction of the conference site. Harrow smiled with satisfaction as he checked a communication device. "Ah, perfect timing. The Apex Warriors I sent to the conference should be beginning their demonstration now. Nothing quite like seeing diplomatic immunity torn apart by superior predators to clarify the real power dynamics in the galaxy." Celine felt her blood turn to ice. The conference site contained thousands of delegates from across the Alliance. If Harrow's enhanced warriors were attacking them, "You'll start a galactic war," she said. "I'll end a galactic deception," Harrow replied. "Humanity will take its rightful place as the dominant species, and the other races will submit or be eliminated. It's that simple." It was then that Celine realized the true scope of what she was facing. This wasn't just about covering up historical atrocities or even contemporary military operations. This was about the fundamental question of humanity's place in the galaxy, and whether that place could be achieved through cooperation or would require conquest. The battle at the conference site was already underway when Selene Selick and their unexpected ally, Tharek Rune, arrived. The Virel commander had been tracking their investigation and had brought a strike team of his best warriors beings, whose pack hunter evolution made them capable of coordinating with human tactical methods in ways that surprised everyone involved. The sight that greeted them was chaos incarnate. The beautiful conference hall had been transformed into a war zone, with delegates from dozens of species taking cover behind overturned furniture, while Apex warriors moved among them with terrifying efficiency. These weren't random attacks, they were systematic demonstrations of human superiority over every other species present. Celine watched in horror as an Apex warrior cornered a group of Andromedan delegates beings, whose crystalline physiology made them incredibly difficult to harm through conventional means. The enhanced human studied them for a moment, then produced a sonic weapon specifically calibrated to shatter their molecular structure. The Andromedans fell like broken glass. "They've adapted to hunt everything," Selick observed with professional admiration, despite the horror of the situation. Each warrior carries weapons and techniques specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of every known Alliance species. "Because that's what we do," Celine realized with sickening clarity. "We study our prey, we learn their weaknesses, and then we exploit them with maximum efficiency." The rescue operation required every bit of tactical knowledge that Celine had gained during her years of military service before entering the diplomatic corps. Working with Tharek's team, they moved through the conference site like their own pack of predators, using virile pack hunting instincts, combined with human strategic thinking, to outmaneuver the Apex warriors. But it quickly became clear that they were fighting a losing battle. The Apex warriors were simply too well designed, too perfectly adapted for combat, against any conceivable opponent. Every time the rescue team thought they had gained an advantage, the enhanced humans would adapt their tactics and regain the upper hand. It was during this desperate running battle that Celine finally came face to face with one of the Apex warriors in single combat. The creature moved with inhuman grace its enhanced physiology, allowing it to perform feats that should have been impossible. But, as they fought, Celine began to recognize something familiar in its movements. The same cold calculation she had felt during the river rescue, the same predatory efficiency that had allowed her to save Jax. The Apex warrior was everything that humanity could become if they abandoned all pretense of civilization. It was faster, stronger, and more efficient than any natural human. But it was also completely without empathy, compassion, or any of the qualities that made cooperation possible. When she finally managed to defeat it, using tactics that felt disturbingly natural, despite her years of diplomatic training, Celine realized that she was looking at a reflection of humanity's potential future. They could become the galaxy's apex predators, but only by abandoning everything that made them worth saving. The final confrontation with Dr. Harrow took place in the ruins of the main conference hall. Most of the delegates had been evacuated, but the beautiful chamber that had been designed to foster cooperation between species was now a monument to the failure of peaceful coexistence. Harrow stood among the wreckage with the satisfaction of a man whose theories had been proven correct. Around him, the remaining Apex warriors had taken defensive positions, but their earlier confidence was gone. Several of their number had fallen during the battle, proving that they were not quite as invincible as their creator had believed. "You see," Ambassador Harrow said as Celine approached with her mixed human-Virel strike team. "When it came down to survival, you fought like the predator you really are. All that diplomatic training, all those years of pretending to be civilized, and in the end you solved the problem with violence." Celine wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. The tactics she had used, the decisions she had made, the cold calculation that had guided her actions, it had all felt natural in a way that diplomatic negotiations never did. "That doesn't mean we have to become monsters," she said finally. "Doesn't it?" Harrow challenged. "Look around you, Celine. Look at what humanity accomplishes when we stop pretending to be something we're not. My Apex warriors defeated the best that dozens of species could offer. If we deployed them across the galaxy, we could establish human dominance within a generation." "And then what?" Tharek Rune interjected, his forearms holding weapons designed specifically for close-quarters combat with enhanced humans. "You rule over a galaxy of corpses. You've proven that humans can kill Doctor. You haven't proven that they can build anything worth preserving." It was then that the final twist revealed itself. The Apex warriors, designed to be the ultimate predators, had been programmed with one crucial flaw: they were designed to hunt everything, including each other. As the stress of the battle mounted and their numbers dwindled, their predatory instincts began turning inward. Celine watched in fascination and horror as the enhanced humans began stalking each other with the same cold efficiency they had shown toward the Alliance delegates. They had been designed to be perfect hunters, but they had also been designed without the social cooperation instincts that had allowed natural humans to form civilizations. The battle ended not with a glorious victory for either side, but with Harrow's perfect predators destroying themselves, while their creator watched his vision of human dominance collapse into fratricidal chaos. In the aftermath, as rescue teams worked to treat the wounded and restore order to the conference site, Celine found herself in the impossible position of having to explain not just the attack, but the entire history of human deception that had made it possible. The revelation of the Othran incident sent shockwaves through the Galactic Alliance. For 200 years, humanity had been trusted as honest brokers in interstellar disputes. The discovery that they had been concealing genocide on such a massive scale called every human diplomatic initiative into question. But perhaps more disturbing was the evidence that Harrow's extremist vision was not entirely without support within human government and military circles. The investigation that followed revealed a complex network of officials who believed that humanity's future lay in domination rather than cooperation. Standing before the reconvened Alliance Assembly, Celine faced the most difficult decision of her career. She could attempt to minimize the damage to find ways to preserve humanity's position within the Alliance through careful diplomatic maneuvering. Or she could tell the complete truth and accept whatever consequences that brought. Honored delegates. She began her voice carrying across the damaged chamber to representatives of species that no longer trusted anything she might say. I stand before you today, not as a defender of Earth's actions, but as someone seeking to find a path toward truth and accountability. Over the following hours, she laid out everything she had discovered. The Othran genocide, the contemporary military operations that violated alliance treaties, the research programs that had produced the apex warriors, and the philosophical divide within humanity about whether they should seek cooperation or dominance in their relations with other species. The response was everything she had feared and worse. Several species immediately called for Earth's expulsion from the Alliance. Others demanded massive reparations for past deceptions. A few suggested that humanity should be placed under some form of galactic supervision until they could prove their commitment to peaceful coexistence. But in the midst of the anger and recrimination, something unexpected happened. Tharek Rune stood to address the assembly, his scarred form bearing witness to the battles he had fought alongside human forces during the crisis. I have seen humans at their worst. He said, his words translated into dozens of languages and communication methods. I have seen their capacity for violence, their instinct for predation, their willingness to deceive even their closest allies. But I have also seen something else. He gestured toward Celine, who stood alone at the center of the chamber, like a defendant awaiting judgment. I have seen a human choose truth over advantage. I have seen a human risk everything to save those she barely knew. I have seen humans fight not for dominance, but for the protection of those weaker than themselves. Tharek paused, letting his words sink in. Perhaps the question is not whether humans are predators. Clearly they are. The question is whether they can choose to be something more. The debate that followed lasted for days, with the future of human-alliance relations hanging in the balance. In the end, the decision was as complex as the crisis that had precipitated it. Earth would remain in the alliance, but under strict monitoring and with significant restrictions on their military activities. More importantly, they would be required to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate all historical incidents of potential treaty violations. Celine accepted appointment as the Commission's first director, a role that would require her to spend the rest of her career investigating and documenting humanity's failures as galactic citizens. It was not the diplomatic triumph she had once hoped to achieve, but it was perhaps the most important work she could imagine. As she prepared for the long journey back to Earth, Celine reflected on everything that had changed. The comfortable certainty of humanity's peaceful nature was gone, replaced by the much more complex reality of a species capable of both cooperation and predation, depending on the circumstances and choices they made. The galaxy had indeed learned that humans were apex predators, pretending to be diplomats. But they had also learned that some humans at least were capable of choosing diplomacy over predation when the consequences of that choice became clear. Standing again at the observation deck where her journey had begun, Celine watched the stars and wondered what kind of species humanity would choose to become. They could follow Harrow's path toward galactic dominance through superior violence, or they could find ways to channel their predatory instincts toward protection rather than conquest. The choice, she realized, would define not just humanity's future, but the future of every species in the galaxy. And for the first time since the crisis began, she felt something that might have been hope. Not for easy answers or simple solutions, but for the possibility that even apex predators could learn to build rather than destroy. The galaxy had learned the truth about humanity, and somehow they were all still here to figure out what came next. Perhaps that was enough to build on. Perhaps that was where true diplomacy began, not in the denial of one's nature, but in the conscious choice to be something better than that nature demanded. As her ship prepared for departure, Celine received one final message from the truth-bearer, who had first contacted her during the crisis. This time, the message was longer. The hunt for truth never ends, but it is the only hunt that makes predators into something worth being. Keep hunting, Ambassador. The galaxy is counting on it. She smiled as she deleted the message, knowing that the sender was right. The hunt for truth would indeed never end, but it was a hunt she was prepared to pursue for as long as it took. Because in the end, the choice between predation and cooperation was not made once but every day, in every decision by every member of every species, trying to build something better than their evolutionary programming demanded. The day the galaxy understood that humans were apex predators, pretending to be diplomats, had ended, but the work of proving that predators could choose to be protectors was just beginning. And Ambassador Celine, Maris Truthseeker, and former pretender, was ready for that hunt.